Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we're back with Super Cacti and Soldier, and it's time to have a look at the rank 4 of the BeNeLux tech tree. After having a look at rank 1, 2 and 3, we're now getting really into some of the post-World War II stuff, including some Centurions and also some other machines from other countries. So starting off, we're going to be looking at a Land Rover, which is always fun to see. This is the 109 TLV, and we'll start off with Cacti. What can you tell us about this little romper?
So, the Land Rover 109, it's a Land Rover Jeep. And as you can see, it has a recoilless rifle strapped onto the back. These were, of course, used post-war, but it's just, I don't know why, but we have a lot of these recoilless rifle trucks. And a lot of people actually want to see these ones in the game. I think the US Jeep with the 109 is more well known. But yeah, I think in game these could be quite fun because the recoilless rifles. This is the 106mm gun. We already have them in game, and they have the heat rounds that can go up to 400mm of armor penetration. So these vehicles will be able to knock out basically anything in 1 or 2 shots. But at the same time, they cannot take any punishment back because it's just a truck with no armor protection whatsoever. But yeah, we're going to be seeing more of these in the tech tree. You can see right after we have another one. But I think it'll be fun to have these in game, but they will not be very useful.
Yeah, they might be pretty fun little scout vehicles, just running around, kind of like the Italian little cars that we have, like the Fiat 6614. Just being able to, every so often, bop somebody and then run away is always a little bit of fun. The next vehicle, I suppose, it looks more like it's straight out of Warhammer 40k, is the M113A1B CSE 90. So what can you tell us about this soldier? It looks like a combination of a very odd turret and of course the well-known 113.
Yeah, so the M113 is probably the most well-known APC around the world. And some nations decided to do crazy stuff with it, like mounting tank cannon turrets on it. Like, I think China has one with a Chaffee turret, and Belgium got one with the CSE 90 turret. In that turret, there is a Cockerel Mark III mounted. We do have one Cockerel gun in game, as far as I know, on the Obel, but it would be lovely to see more. And through Belgium, because it's a Belgian product, you will see a lot more Cockerel cannons. But yeah, it's a crazy sort of hybrid vehicle where you have the M113, but you take it in a role that it isn't really supposed to do, and you make a sort of anti-tank thing. Yeah, I think this is a lot of fun.
Yeah, to me, I really like those styles of vehicles in War Thunder. Something which is a little bit small, a little bit fast, maybe not too much armor, but has a good punch in it. And with that 90mm, I hope that will definitely give that vehicle something to, well, talk about. So the next vehicle is, of course, well, vehicles, is the set of Centurions. We have the Mark III, Mark V NL, and also the Mark VII. So let us know about each of these vehicles, Cacti. What differences are there between them, and maybe the ones we already see in game?
So in game we have the Mark III already. And for the people that want to know what the Mark V is, the Mark V is basically a Centurion Mark III, but then slightly upgraded. I think one of the more visual changes you can see on this vehicle is most of them have a machine gun mounted on the top of the commander's hatch. And the Centurion Mark VII was an attempt, or well, it worked actually, so it wasn't really an attempt. It was an upgraded Centurion Mark III with larger fuel tanks. Because one of the bad things about the Centurion was that it had kind of limited range. When we look at these vehicles from the Dutch point of view, I have researched a lot into these Centurions. They're one of my favorite tanks ever. And we bought the Mark III and the Mark VII straight from Britain. As you can see with the flags, it's mostly a British flag in the background, so these are exactly the same as their British counterparts. But when it comes to the Mark V, these are actually Mark IIIs that were upgraded by us to the Mark V standard. These changes were mainly to swap out all the equipment on the inside to US-built equipment, because that's what we used the most of them at the time. Like, you got to keep in mind, when a foreign nation buys these vehicles, all the equipment inside could be unknown to them, could be weird, because it's all British. So we changed all of those to US ones. And also one of the big changes we did was we changed the machine guns from the BZA type to the M1919 30 caliber Browning machine gun. But other than that, it's just Centurion Mark V, just slightly modified by us. That's also why it has the NL name in it.
That makes sense, and it would be nice to see more Centurions in the game. Personally, I like the Centurion Mark V just because it was used heavily by, I believe, the Australians. They actually took it to Vietnam, if I'm correct. I might just check that, but you know, it's one of those things that I remember reading about. Maybe it was a later version of the Cent. But anyway, the next vehicle is the DAF YP408, and these two sets of vehicles, or two vehicles, look pretty fun. And also would give a different gameplay option just because of the wheelie boy idea. So let us know about these soldiers. Where do these ideas and vehicles come from?
Yeah, we covered the YP408 in the first video, if I remember correctly. No, the second. As an APC variant, but as I mentioned back then, you will see more of it, and here they are. There are so it's the same vehicle still, but this one has the 106mm recoilless rifle again. You can see that gun on quite a lot of things. So yeah, now it fulfills an anti-tank role. The difference between the 1 and the 3 you have here in a folder is the placement of the rifle. So you have 3 possible positions where the rifle could be situated. On the 3, you see it's on the front. On the 1, you can't see it, so that's a bit difficult. But yeah, it's just a really cool sort of APC vehicle that does anti-tank.
Something I'd like to add to it, actually, the TOV 1, 2, and 3 naming we've used is not an historical name. Just want to point that out. Like, this was just a project, one single vehicle used different type of configurations, and 1, 2, and 3 is just a way for us to let you guys know it's a slightly different configuration. But in real life, this vehicle is just called the YP408 105 TLV.
That makes sense, and also I have confirmed that the Centurions the Australians used the Centurion Mark V, so it would be nice to either see it in some kind of BeNeLux tech tree, or even, you know, just as a British premium, just alongside a bunch of the other Australian vehicles. We're going to group these two together, the Sibmus AA and also the Sibmus IFV, just because they're on, well, the same general structure. So let us know about these two vehicles, Cacti, and also why is the Sibmus sat as a premium in its IFV form?
So the Sibmas is a Belgium amphibious infantry fighting vehicle. And as usual with these IFVs, for some reason everybody likes to just test out every possible weapon loadout on this vehicle, and this one is no different. The AA one, but guess we'll cover that one first. This one is armed with two 20mm autocannons, and I also believe it has some sort of a radar. I'm not really sure it's fully tracking, but at least spotting, something along those lines. So it's a bit of a modern AA, but because it only has two 20mm, it's a bit let down. So that's why it's down here at a lower battle rating. When it comes to these 20mm, I cannot fully confirm it, but considering there are modern 20mm, I would say they also get some sort of armor-piercing rounds. So this is kind of like a multi-role vehicle. The premium one, the Sibmas IFV, this is the one in the infantry fighting vehicle configuration. This one is armed with a 20mm gun, so only a single one. So when you look at the AA one, this one is kind of a step down. I am not too sure which type of 20mm this is. But the reason why the IFV is as a premium is we actually have another Sibmas coming up later in the next video, actually. And this one's armed with a 90mm gun. So this vehicle has used so many different weapon platforms. We thought the IFV, just the standard one with the 20mm, would be best suited as a premium. And it's actually a quite low battle rating rank. What rank are we on? Rank 4, I believe. It's a kind of a low battle rating premium, so it'll be quite nice to have. If it was added into the game, I would just keep it at like a low GE price. There's something people can pick up for like a low amount.
It could also be a nice way of getting people into rank 4 as a scouting vehicle, in a way, just kind of like the AMX-13 SS11 in a way, where it offers you something slightly different, but also is a little bit of fun on top of it, and obviously not fully meta, but it still offers a different playstyle. The last vehicle is, of course, the gift slash premium gift vehicle that we see for rank 4, and this is the UMM Entrepreneur, the TLV. So what is the difference between this soldier and something like the Land Rover 109 TLV? Is it just a different chassis, or are there other differences to it?
So yeah, the difference between this one and Land Rover is the chassis. Obviously, this is a different Jeep. But something to keep in mind is that the Dutch trialed and tested the Entrepreneur, but never took it into full active service. So that's kind of also the reason why it's not at least in the tech tree, because we technically didn't really use it. But we trialed it, so it makes sense. And if this is a Portuguese vehicle, but I don't really. So unless a Spanish tech tree or something like that gets added, I don't really know where Portugal would fit in. So assuming that, you could just stick this vehicle here. Also, because it's not the most unique and different vehicle, I would probably make it pretty easy to get as an event vehicle. Perhaps some kind of event where for like 2 stars or 1 star you get this, to kind of spice it up, but to keep it kind of easy to get.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I mean, when we look at its general usability, once again, it's one of these very light vehicles, which is going to be incredibly small, but definitely not on the same, the same level as something like the Orbital HVG that everybody loves so much. Instead, it's going to be one of those which you see it once, it shoots you, maybe it kills you, and if it doesn't, well, you're just going to machine gun it to death. And another vehicle which is very similar to that, so we have the NECAF M38A1C. So is this a Willys Jeep Cacti, or is this just another different Jeep?
So the NECAF Jeep, we've actually talked about this one before. It was in the previous video, and here it was in the previous video. It was armed with a 75mm recordless gun, and this one, of course, is just the next step up with a 106mm recordless gun. About the NECAF, it's actually a Willys Jeep, the M38. But this one is a license produced here in the Netherlands, so it received a different name. It happens quite a lot actually when people produce something of their own, they give it a different name. But as you can see, the name is actually just the M38A1C. And like we talked about with the previous vehicle, the Land Rover 109, these vehicles would most likely just work the best as light vehicles, scouting vehicles. I don't know how well they'll be in the game, but it would just be fun to have.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the fact that a lot of this, rank seems to be focused around very lightly armored vehicles and just a little bit of power on the gun side of things is really nice. It's a playstyle I generally like. I know it's not for everybody, but not every nation can have these large, massive bruisers alongside some of their lightly armed vehicles. The next one is a vehicle I would love to see in the British tree, and it makes its mark in the BeNeLux tree as well, the Scorpion 90. So let us know about this one, soldier. How did Belgium get a hold of this vehicle?
So this is a vehicle that, as far as I know at least, Belgium never took into active service, but it's one of those vehicles that doesn't really go anywhere. So the Scorpion obviously is a nice little vehicle from Britain that has a British gun, obviously, but some countries wanted more anti-tank killing capabilities, probably, and went for the Cochrane 90mm. So Malaysia, as far as I know, and Venezuela, and Indonesia actually used it with a 90mm gun, but they obviously included some other changes, while Cochrane obviously provided the package to upgrade it with the 90mm. So this machine that we have here in the tech tree would be just a straight up Scorpion, but then with the 90mm. Just the upgrade package on it, but not all the other changes that stuff like Malaysia and Indonesia used on it. But yeah, it would be pretty nice to play in with its obviously it's 90 mil and its killing capability. But yeah, it would be good to see a Scorpion in one way or another.
Yeah, I agree. If it isn't coming to the British tree, I think I would like to see it in another tree, just to have some representation of it, just because it's a really cool vehicle. The next two vehicles we're actually going to skip, the M26A1 and the M46 Pattern. These are just the same as the M26A1 that we see in the Italian tech tree, and also the M46 from, of course, the American tech tree. Maybe you could make it slightly different by not giving it the chicken wire, but everything else would be exactly the same. Moving on, we have the CATI or the CATI-90. This looks like another very small vehicle which could run around the speed of sound. So what is this vehicle, Cacti? It looks like a little box of fun.
Yeah, the CATI-90 is actually a Lloyd carrier, which is a vehicle the British used quite a lot, and also a vehicle that got exported all over the place. But as you can see, there's a rather big gun sticking out of the front of this thing, so this is not just the standard carrier vehicle. This vehicle was built post-war, right around 1954, and Belgium actually thought, well, we have these carriers, let's try to put on a 90mm gun. I must say, this 90mm is not just a standard old vehicle, it's the same type of 90mm you get on armored cars. So this actually does have heat rounds that can pen up to 350mm of armor. So it's a very fun looking and also very small tank destroyer with a very punchy gun. Looking at the crew, it's right around 3 people. So that's 1 gunner, a loader, and a driver. And I take it the loader is also a commander at the same time. The gun itself can actually fire up to 10 rounds a minute. So that is not bad at all. It's just like a 6-second reload. So yeah, I think this will be a very fun, very nimble little tank destroyer. When it comes to the other ammunition it just had the heat rounds like I just mentioned, and also some HE. So sadly no actual solid AP rounds, but to be honest, it's good enough as it is.
Yeah, I think I think it would be a nice little fun little vehicle, along with these ones as well, the YPR-765A1 and also the AIFV. So what are these about, Soldier? Obviously they look different to the M113 chassis, but are these just another idea of like an IFV with a decent gun on top, or is there something a little bit more to these vehicles?
So yeah, here you have a Dutch and Belgian IFV that is simply based on the M113. They're both very similar. That's something to keep in mind. Because the Belgian one is actually the Dutch one, but then just slightly cranked up, just slightly changed. The YPR-765 is actually a vehicle that was recently taken out of service after use in places like Afghanistan and other places. But actually, the YPR-765 also got some kind of armor package you could put on it to help defend it against RPGs, actually. But both of them only got the Orlikon, the 25mm. So, and a coaxial, obviously, but no missiles or anything. So that's the reason why these very modern IFVs are down here. Because, well, if you have a missile, the vehicle is greatly better, but they don't. So yeah, that's what you get here. It's an IFV with a 25mm that could go around the place, shoot aircraft potentially, shoot light tanks, shoot all kinds of things, scout obviously, and yeah, it would be a sort of different playstyle than what you standardly get, and it obviously doesn't really compare to a Bradley for the lack of a missile, for example.
Yeah, and I think eventually, if they wanted, to add more IFVs with missile capabilities, I think after the success of the Warrior and the Bradley and stuff, people would be okay with them. But there is also, as you said, there must be room for carriers which don't have these missiles. And as we've seen, the chain gun from the Bradley is incredibly effective. So putting it at a little bit lower BR as a different vehicle, but maybe with some different ammunition choices, I think a lot of people would be receptible to. The next next vehicle is the M110A2, and this is another big chonker designed to put a very large hole in the city over there. Tell us about this vehicle, Cacti, and its general uses.
So the M110 is actually a very similar vehicle to what we talked about in the last video. In the last video, we talked about the M107 with a 175mm gun. The M110 has a 203mm gun. So when you look at it in game, you can just compare this to the guns we see on like a Mogami or just on a ship, but then on a tank. It's actually quite ridiculous when you think about this. So this is another artillery vehicle that was actually quite widely exported around, and we also got our hands on them. I'm not too sure in which exact wars or conflicts we use these vehicles, but when we look at the ammunition of this artillery vehicle, it's mainly all HE, but there are some other HE rocket-assisted projectiles, so I think when it comes to ammunition of this vehicle, we can make it quite interesting, actually. Also, it used nuclear artillery shells, but I am 100% sure we Dutch never used nuclear rounds. I think we're kind of against that. So in Dutch servers, or just the one here in the BeNeLux tech tree, we just have HE. But it being a premium, we thought it would just be a fun donk vehicle people can just buy. Honestly, in-game, it might be best to give this one a bit of a pricey Golden Eagle price, just to make sure we don't get entire teams filled up with M110s. But yeah, in game, it'll just derp the fuck out of anything it comes across, really.
Yeah, I agree. It would be one of those vehicles where it would kind of be like one shot and done, but that one shot would be incredibly fun. Very much similar to stuff like the SU-100Y and machines like that, which even have... The SU-100Y is a massive gun, but you've got to remember it's still only 130mm, still way smaller than the gun on that machine. The next one is a little bitty armored car, and it is the FN4RM. It looks a lot of fun and looks very similar to the Orbital. You know, the one with the Cockerel 90 on it. Does this one have the 90mm soldier, or does it have a different gun on it?
Yeah, this was a attempt by Fabrique Nationale, which is a pretty famous weapon manufacturer from Belgium, to create an armored car from the gendarmerie. It has a 90mm CITI cannon, so it can fire like heat and shrapnel. And there are two variants of it. One is actually a 90mm, and that's this one basically. The other one has a 60mm mortar, but I'm very unsure if a 60mm mortar is usable at all. So for now at least, we don't have that in 3. This one also has 2 coaxials, or well, 2 machine guns that is, and it goes like 110 kilometers an hour. So yeah, you get a very fast armored car. Closest comparison in game is probably the Obel, from Italy, obviously. It's a vehicle from around 1961, and there is actually one still laying around in a museum. But yeah, it's a pretty fun armored car, I reckon, to use.
Yeah, I think it would be pretty fun, and we really have massively got a lot of light vehicles. It definitely seems incredibly fun to me. But then, of course, as I said before, we have some big chonkers, and this one definitely represents that area as well, and also is one that I've seen a lot of people from the American side of things clamoring for too, the 155mm M109. So let us know about this vehicle, Cacti, and how you see it fitting in the game.
I would compare the M109 to the Type 75 SPH we currently have in the Japanese Ground Forces tech tree. Although I must point out, the M109 we have in this tech tree is the A2-90, and the -90 simply stands for like the specific variant we use. This is the final variant we've ever operated of the M109. But when you look up the M109, there's actually 2 more notable variants. The very first one, this one is just named M109. This one has a much shorter barrel. I think it's right around 20 caliber in length. But this one, of course, is the M109A2. This one has a much longer barrel. So I would see this as, well, just like I just said, the Type 75 SPH, but then slightly better. A bit more of a punch, simply because the gun is a whole lot bigger. Also, what I quite like about the M109 It's one of those modern artillery vehicles. So far, when we've talked about artillery vehicles like the M110 we just talked about, these guns are stuck in a forward-firing position. They only have a little bit of left and right traverse. But these ones are in fully rotating turrets, and we will be seeing more of M109s and other artillery vehicles like this in this tech tree.
Yeah, it's one of those things where can you imagine being sat, moving around a corner, and then you get corner peaked by something with a 155mm like this, and obviously it's got its turret turned backwards, so you can't really shoot any of it. It's going to be hilarious, just kind of like how people do it with the Type 75 in the Japanese tree, but obviously with a lot larger and bigger bang results. The last vehicle is the one which is actually labeled for pre-order bundles. So obviously that means is this is the belief that this vehicle should be part of kind of the pre-order bundle for the CBT of this tree from the creators of it, and this is another DAF vehicle. So what's the difference between this vehicle, Soldier, and the DAFs that we saw earlier in this part of the tech tree?
Yeah, again, this is the same as the other YP408s that we talked about. But this one is one where the gun is in the back, which is a pretty odd position. I mean, you can peek the other way around, so to speak. You can peek from your back, and then you have some kind of advantage. But because there's not really a whole lot of stuff there with the gun. But yeah, this is marked as the pre-order bundle because it is obviously a Dutch vehicle and makes sense to be special. And obviously, recently with Sweden and with Italy, also added. You get a few vehicles before the whole tree gets added. So then you have the chance to buy one and then get a similar variant of it when it actually comes out as a tree. So in that scenario, obviously the other YP408s aren't there yet. So this is exclusive, so to speak. So it would be a nice vehicle to buy and to play right out of the gate. And then when the tree comes out, you can experience a full lineup of 3 of these if you really want to. So that's basically why it's a bit more special.
And for me, it very much reminds me of the AMX13 SS11, where you have other AMX13s in the tech tree for the French, but of course it is slightly different, and the format has slightly different capabilities, so it's perfect to be one of those pre-order vehicles. And it's nice to see that, in the BeNeLux tech tree, there's something similar. So that is rank 4 done, and after finishing rank 1, 2, 3, and of course 4, now we're going to be moving on to rank 5 in the next video, which is jam-packed full of very, very fun and interesting machines. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and thank you to Cacti and Soldier for joining me. If you want any more information on the BeNeLux tech tree and any of the other stuff that we've had a look at in this series of videos, all of the links are in the description. Make sure to check them out. Make sure to enjoy the content created. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Ambrosius McClellan, B. Young, Blackie, Chris Giltname, Daniel Stanton, Jay Wilt, John Ryman, Martinez, Moxie, Super Cacti, Trigger Hippie, Eugens Terry, and also Elove Goat and Samuel Slick for supporting the channel.